What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Double Coverage, the premier NFL podcast of the Gin Sports Network. I'm John J. II, alongside Robert Rachow and Tony Minarik, our 2024 Turkey Bowl champions. I mean, Robert, tell me something good, man. I mean, how you guys feeling hoisting the platinum platter? I mean, it's got to feel good.
Hey, it's pretty good, man. It's first win for me, so that was a good dub. Got a little carried, but hey, I showed up.
That was a good team win. T, what about you, man?
Hey, wasn't my first win, but it feels good. It's been a while. Was it 3 years, I think, since I won last? So it feels good to get a win under the belt.
Absolutely. So we're right in the midst of the NFL playoffs, as you gentlemen know. Just got through the wild card round, and I think we had some surprises. I guess what biggest surprises stand out to us the most? Obviously, the Chargers losing significantly to the Texans. Nobody really expected the Texans to do as good as they did. Robert, we'll start with you. What was the catalyst for the Houston Texans to win, and so significantly, against this Chargers team?
Yeah, well, it was all that defense, man. I mean, they picked off Herbert 4 times. He's another guy that didn't really have a lot of playoff experience coming in, kind of like we talked, a week or two ago. So, that defense really is what won them the game. And you look at like CJ Stroud's numbers, they were pretty pedestrian. I think he had like 1 touchdown, 1 pick. It was kind of like an average game for him. But yeah, when you can pick them off 4 times in the playoffs, like that's usually a dub. So all defense for the Texans. I don't think it's going to be enough, this week, but to beat up Chargers team, it sure was enough. They were missing their two of their starting receivers, so kind of a tough break for them. Miss a couple key guys come playoff time, but with Harbaugh there, overall, their trajectory seems to be up and up. So hopefully they can bounce back next year. Texans, I think this is just kind of like one of the middle of the road teams. I don't think they're really gonna get another win here this week, but you never know. But that defense really, if they can continue to play like that against a Patrick Mahomes, they got a shot.
Absolutely. Tony, what's your take on the Texans and where they're at? I guess, and we've said this in previous shows, that CJ Stroud playing in the playoffs is a different version of CJ Stroud, especially even leading up into the playoffs. We're seeing that, especially now. They fell short last year, obviously, but their work's been paying dividends, and you can see it, especially against a seasoned Chargers team, which arguably they could have been one of those bubble teams. Probably really didn't deserve to be there anyway. But you see the unlocking of Justin Herbert by Jim Harbaugh, and you kind of expect that the Chargers are going to reach a new threshold of their game. That doesn't happen. They kind of revert and maybe even go a couple steps back. What did you see in this Texans team that really stood out to you against this Chargers team?
Well, I think it was just honestly the score, because I obviously when we had our last podcast, I projected the Chargers to win. So I was a little shocked. I mean, I wouldn't say I was shocked that Houston won. I was shocked that how they won. Was it 34-9 or 34-6 or something like that? I mean, that was shocking me, because I felt like the Texans, especially the second half of the season, did not show any explosive potential that they did early on in the season, probably since Nico went out. And then he came back and he looked really good in this game. Offense kind of looked like they were clicking. CJ Stroud, doing a little bit what he did at Ohio State, little broken plays. He was making a play that you didn't think was going to happen. So that looked really good. Chargers side, Herbert he looked lost. I mean, he looked like he was just kind of throwing a lot of 50-50 balls on hopes and prayers, hoping a receiver would come down with it, and obviously they didn't. I think a couple more poor decisions than you'd seen that he'd made all year. And then a little bit on top of it, Harbaugh had, kind of, I would say, honed in Herbert a little bit, because previous years it was just run and gun, just Herbert throw 55 times. You can have 400, 500 passing yards, but our defense was probably going to give up double that. So we needed you to score 5, 6, 7 touchdowns. And Harbaugh really kind of turned down the tempo and let's slow it down. Let's worry about our defense. Let's strengthen that. And you just make a play when we need you to. And in this game, they needed Herbert to make a play, and he did not step up. And I like Herbert, but he looked like completely like you'd never seen the playoffs and never knew what he was doing and looked completely lost out there. And that's what honestly shocked me the most on watching that game.
Yeah, it seems the more experience that the Chargers have in the playoffs, the worse they play year over year. I don't know why that is. It could be have to do with coaching, could be have to do with mentality, team chemistry, whatever. You can blame it on anything you want. Bottom line is, when they get to the playoffs, if they get to the playoffs, they usually crumble under the pressure. And at least when the going gets tough, that's been the case. What about the Vikings, though? I think the Vikings was even more surprising. First going down to the Lions and in the battle for the 1 seed in the NFC, taking the 5 seed as a 14-win team, kind of that's a tough pill to swallow no matter what camp you're from. And then going against a Rams team that has been solid. They've proven they're solid. Attitude towards the game, offensively, defensively, they have their weapons. They face their injuries just like every other team has. But they have the resilience. They have the postseason experience. Sean McVay's got that team in a good spot. But what didn't allow, rather, the Minnesota Vikings to rebound off of that loss to Detroit? Because it looked like a lot of the same. It looked like the same exact team that was in Ford Field a couple weeks ago now. What the hell happened, Robert? I mean, this is the Vikings team that I can't believe they had 14 wins under their belt.
Yeah, I mean, it's like we kind of knew this was going to happen with Sam Darnold, right? I mean, he just doesn't have that experience, that playoff pedigree. And, you coming up against like a good Rams team in the playoffs that's been to the Super Bowl, right? I mean, they still have a lot of those players. And, they have a lot of good young talent. Like they've done a pretty good job at drafting some of these guys, in the later rounds without a lot of top draft picks because they were trading away their future to get Stafford, right? So, um, they just basically copied what the Lions' game plan was: pressure Darnold, and yeah, he just looked lost out there. Yeah, he could not connect on any deep throws. He got that one to Hawkinson, late, but it was kind of like over at that point. So
that was a shitty pass too.
Yeah, he kind of just made a play on that one, and yeah, the Rams had 9 sacks or something crazy. So 7 to 9 sacks. It was something almost, borderline record, I think. And that was coming from all over the place. They had multiple people with multiple sacks. So they really just took a kind of page out of the Lions playbook and how they blitzed and getting pressure on Darnold, making him uncomfortable. They didn't get a lot going in the running game that they would have liked to, the Vikings, that is. And yeah, I just think it comes down to that quarterback. Like if they'd had a different quarterback, show up for that playoff game, it could have been a completely different story. But that's really going to be an interesting thing coming off season. Like, are they going to re-sign him now? I mean, they were talking like if they get a couple playoff wins with Darnold, they're going to get this big contract and there's going to be this like quarterback controversy. But now I think that's pretty much put to bed. I mean, I don't think you can just go hand him this huge contract when he hasn't proven that he can win on the big stage yet. So maybe they keep him, maybe they don't. They got Daniel Jones as a backup. McCarthy's there. So yeah, they just imploded down the stretch. I mean, it's sad to see, but as a Lions fan, it's kind of nice. Nice.
I mean, Daniel Jones ain't much of a backup. You might as well have a whiteboard as your backup for that. He's basically a cardboard cutout that breathes and walks and talks.
Yeah, he's going to be serviceable as a backup. Like he could come in and win you a game, but yeah, he's not a starter. He's proven that. So.
Right. I think they can. I think the Vikings can see themselves getting into some quarterback trouble, especially if they don't utilize JJ McCarthy and if they decide to trade him or get rid of him, because you kind of have that hidden stock. We don't know what this guy is capable of in the regular season in a real game situation because he never got to play in one. He never got a snap in one. Tony, what the hell happened to the Vikings that caused them to crumble in these playoffs?
Well, first obvious one is, Darnold played very poorly. And you can look back at it and go, well, the offensive line didn't protect him. Some of them is not all on his fault, but most of it, you got to get rid of the ball a little quicker because you could tell he's looking at his first option, second option, third option. You you should have just threw it away after the second option. You got people coming down your throat. Come on, just throw it away. And he's trying to make a play, kind of like what he did all year. But when it comes down to the playoffs, it's kind of cut your losses. You're not going to be able to probably make that spectacular play that you're making all year against, a 2-3 Carolina team type of thing. So definitely Darnold's fault. But then also, I think everything went downhill on that overturned incomplete pass from Stafford that I think should have been called a fumble and returned for a touchdown. That would have made it a tie game. I think that could have really changed the tide for him. But then you get an incomplete pass. I believe they go down and score a touchdown that play, make it 17-3. And I think Darnold just, like I said, he didn't help you in any way. So he didn't go down and get you a touchdown or even a field goal that you need. And it was downhill from there. And I give it to the Rams. They played exactly how they played all year, made a play when they needed to make a play. Defense has stepped up when I think a lot of people thought the defense might take a step back with losing Aaron Donald. And the couple rookies they have on that offensive or defensive line has looked really good this year. And that defense has played, I think, 10 times better than what people thought they were going to play this year. And they might be, I can see them winning probably maybe another game too. So I don't think they're going to be a one and done.
Yeah, they're definitely looking like that. And they know their way around the playoffs, especially at this point in the year. Sean McVay has his team trained to deal with situations and games like this. So they're bound to make a run. You can blame it at any number of things for the Vikings. I think it's just the most surprising factor that they didn't bounce back in their loss to Detroit. And it was such a profound loss. Basically one after another. It's like, how the hell did this team get 14 wins? Okay, it's a solid team. You got a solid schedule. You're playing tough teams. There's a lot of question marks there that they got to answer going into the offseason. But looking at the other two games, looking at the Packers against Philly, I guess if we want to dissect that one at all, we just didn't see the playoff Packers that we were used to seeing in years past. Jordan Love couldn't rally the troops, and it came down to it's really no match against the Philadelphia Eagles and the team they got. Robert, real quick, what are your takeaways from that game? And that was pretty much smooth sailing for the Philadelphia Eagles. What do you attribute that to?
Yeah, I think we really hit the nail on the head last week with the whole, a lot of quarterbacks that don't have any experience in the playoffs. I know he's got some, right? I mean, they've won playoff games, but he's still relatively new, and they were missing a couple pieces, right? But when you got a quarterback that throws 3 picks, no touchdown, I mean, it's hard to win. So, I mean, just similar scenario to the Vikings. Really, it comes down to that quarterback play. Really, just kind of handed Philly the game. They just kind of took all the momentum with those picks and ran with it. And against a good Philly team, that's all they needed. They can ground pound, they can pass. They can do anything. They're a Super Bowl contender, just like we've seen in years past. So, yeah, you can't come and just gift them multiple turnovers and expect any other outcome.
Tony, I know you're a big Nick Sirianni fan. Tell me about these Eagles. What makes them so good?
Well, I think the biggest story that came out of that game was probably the famous book on the sideline from A.J. Brown. He was so bored out there, you need to read a couple, keep his mind active. And as you said, Sirianni's such a great coach. I see he's got his guys, right in shape for the playoffs. So I think the Eagles' biggest problem going forward, separate from this game, is you got a lot of outside of the locker room talk where is everybody, meshing. Is Hurts really going to be your guy future? Because every time he has to throw, he looks like he doesn't want to throw. He wants to just, get shoved 3 times by 3 guys from the back to score a 1-yard touchdown all the time. But but they looked like a playoff team on the field. Obviously, like I said, I think their biggest issue might be the noise outside of the stadium from fans, other people, just media people saying, hey, what about this? What's going on with this? So if they can tune that out, they can be a very dangerous team in the playoffs. And if they can't, they could crumble very quickly.
Yeah, the internal drama, especially with the A.J. Brown book on the sidelines. I mean, you get too lost in the weeds with that. Next thing you know, you're in a whirlwind as far as the Eagles sideline and their starting lineups, et cetera. Everybody's, focused on this. Then you got the media on it. And then it's just like, okay, well, what the hell are we doing? We got to still go out and play the game of football. You get too much caught up in the noise, it could really cause issues for you. And then I think the Bills Broncos game really spoke for itself. I mean, talk about the first play. Was it the first play of the game? They ran that play to the end zone. Robert, help me out here. I mean, that
It
was
was
just
early.
it was a bomb. It was either the first or second play.
Yeah, it was early.
And I'm like, holy shit! Like, don't tell me these guys are about to be right, because I'm in trouble big time. Turns out the game didn't really pan out that way going forward beyond that moment. They didn't really score many more points past that. But the Bills got to watch out. I mean, their secondary, their defense really isn't as good as people portray it to be. And I'm going to be the first one to say it, because I'm very critical, especially my own teams. So they have to figure that out, or they're going to get burned big time. And I know Baltimore has multiple weapons, but if that secondary doesn't get in check and doesn't figure out how to play the game of football, they're going to get burned deep on multiple occasions, because they're playing some air raid teams here coming up. They got to get through Baltimore first, so that's a hell of a task itself.
2 MVP candidates there. I mean,
right.
That's gonna be probably the best game in the playoffs. Might even trump the Super Bowl, whoever ends up there. So
it could. So I got to give Bo Nix, Sean Payton, and the rest of the Broncos credit for the fight and for the heart to make it to the playoffs and battle their way to the playoffs and get to the wild card and face off against a good Bills team in Highmark. Fell short, but I think their future is bright. So without further ado, let's jump right into the bracket. So we got what we've all been waiting for. Not quite yet. We're building up. We're getting further down the line. We're getting into the divisional semifinal of the NFL playoffs, which we're finally here. It's crazy. It seems like we're just in preseason, and we're looking at these games and dicing them up and talking about them, et cetera. So let's start with the Texans and the Chiefs. Robert, you hinted towards, there could be some holes that could be found on the Texans side of the ball that could really stick it to the Chiefs. What are those holes exactly, and where are those vulnerabilities they got to hit? What are those exactly?
Yeah, so I mean, the Texans, it's going to come down to, can they play as good a ball on defense as they played the first week, and against the Kansas City Chiefs and Andy Reid. I mean, that just seems like a tall order. So, I don't think they're going to live up to that first win there. So, and CJ Stroud has just not really proven that he's like this X factor in the game yet. He had that really great rookie season, and this year he's just had a huge slump. And so far in the playoffs, I mean, he hasn't really been making those big key throws. So I don't know. I think that of all the games, that seems like the biggest landslide chancer of all of them, that the Kansas City Chiefs are just going to run away with it. But it is the playoffs, and they kind of surprised everybody the first week against the Chargers. So anything's possible. But yeah, I think the Chiefs still will run away with that one.
Yeah, I think I might have to swallow my own pride a little bit talking down on the Texans, because it's like, what team are we going to get? And that's kind of the narrative we had when we talked about the quarterback play and the importance of the quarterback play. What team are we going to get on any given week? And we kind of expected, especially looking back to, and we didn't dissect it too much because it wasn't really worth doing, the Baltimore-Pittsburgh game, because we got the shitty version of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mike Tomlin basically said, screw it. We made it. And, that's kind of is what it is. We got another winning season under my belt. And, his notches have been made on his belt. So he's not too worried about it. Obviously, they'd like to go further. But there's a meme out there, and I couldn't find it for the life of me, but it's Mike Tomlin looking blankly into the camera. And he's just like this with a headset on, freezing his ass off. And, oh, man, I wish I could find it, but it's just funny as hell. But the Pittsburgh Steelers are not a playoff team. We wanted them to be one, and you get a good version of the Steelers. You get them to mesh well, and that's where another way you can see the mesh was ruined, and it was hindered by a lot of the drama going on, particularly with George Pickens. So you look at that drama, you look at that stuff, but you get a good team. You get a good team in the Texans to play against the Chiefs, which they had an extra week off. Anything could happen. Tony, what are your takeaways from this game, looking forward, looking into it before we get to watch it?
Yeah, I think Baltimore and the Bills both are, hitting on all cylinders, and I think it might be a little. I mean, personally, I think the Texans should be happy to play Kansas City of the between Baltimore and Bills because they both, I think, are buzzsaws right now, and it sucks they have to play each other in the divisional round because I think it's gonna be a great game, so I'm gonna enjoy that. But I wish I could have seen Bills Ravens in the AFC Championship game because I think that is the best two teams. Because Kansas City had more wins, obviously got the number one seed, but I don't think if you watch their games, every one was a nail biter. And if the Texans can play well, I think they could actually shock Kansas City. But it is Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid at home. It's going to be hard. But the Baltimore Buffalo game, I think that is going to live up to all the hype. I do think it's going to be a shootout, though. I think it's going to be who can score quicker, who can score, get one stop maybe. It reminds me of was a few years ago the 13 seconds Kansas City ended up scoring to go to I think was the Super Bowl or AFC Championship game against Buffalo. I think it's gonna be the same type of game. If you give Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen 20 seconds at the end of a half or the game, I think that could be a nail in the coffin. So, like you said, probably the front running MVP candidates with Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen going at it. And I think it's going to be a great game. And I think both teams really showed in the wild card round that we are the teams to be feared in the AFC right now because Baltimore just dismantled Pittsburgh and Buffalo kept their foot on the gas and did not look back against Denver. So I think it's going to be a real good game, but I think it's going to be definitely a shootout. And I think it's going to be something where you're going to want to sit down and make sure you had enough bathroom breaks at halftime because you're not going to want to peel your eyes off the TV screen.
Yeah, I agree. It probably should be, honestly, it should be Buffalo and the Ravens, just with how the Chiefs have been playing, and there's some fraudulent aspects to it. But we can kind of look back and see the reflection of the OT thriller that we saw January 23rd of 2022, where unfortunately Josh Allen made the wrong coin toss call and wound up costing the game, and wound up sending shockwaves through the rules makers of the NFL to change the rules for playoff football, especially in overtime scenarios. But you look at that game, talk about a shootout back and forth, talk about 2-minute drill football. I mean, it's kind of setting up to be that rematch in the AFC Championship. If the cards fall, how the seeds are written, that's at least something to look forward to. Another rematch, a familiar rematch that we've seen in the past. So it would be good to see. But I agree with how strong these teams are, especially on the ground, and how diverse their quarterbacks are. And I'm not taking anything away from Patty Mahomes, but looking at the quarterback play especially, and the facilitation of the offense from the quarterbacks, both respected quarterbacks, Lamar and Josh Allen, it's really second to none when it comes to football. And if two teams in the AFC could be in the Super Bowl, that would be a hell of a Super Bowl. Obviously, that's not the case. But Robert, what's your takeaways looking forward to this game, Baltimore and Buffalo? What do we got to look forward to, and what is going to be the keys to winning this game?
Yeah, I mean, just like we were talking, I think that's kind of the game of the year, regardless of who ends up in the Super Bowl. I just think they're two really great teams. Having Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry on the same team is just kind of unfair. It's like, how do you even game plan against that as a defensive coordinator? So really, I mean, the keys of the game for that, I mean, if you're the Ravens, you want to stick to your historically ground pound game plan that the Ravens have always been known for. And as far as the Bills, I mean, air it out and let Josh Allen take off, man. I mean, that's their whole game plan. Cooks is obviously coming to the fold, has been a really good running back for them. So get the run game going a little bit. But yeah, I think it's going to come down to clock control more than just score. I think, whoever's getting some nice clock eating drives in there is really going to help their team, advance to the next round.
Absolutely. Tony, I guess, did you have anything else to add to this game? I know you mentioned it briefly, but looking at the Ravens-Bills game, playing at Highmark, obviously both these teams are used to playing in the cold, playing outdoors. What's it going to take for either team to win this game? and make it to the AFC Championship?
It's like I said, I think it's definitely going to be a shootout. So it's going to be, can you get the stop at the right time? If it's a 2-minute offense defensively on a 2-minute offense for Ravens or the Bills, you got to get a stop, survive maybe at the end of half, or it's definitely at the end of the game, obviously. But I think it's going to be that 1 or 2 defensive stops that you're going to need to make in crunch time is going to be the difference, because Lamar obviously has shown throughout all season that they can score and Ravens can score. And if they want to, stack the box against Derrick Henry because they don't want him to rush for 150 yards, he can throw it over your head or he'll rush for 150 yards himself. And kind of almost the same thing with Josh Allen. Is he going to, throw for 250 and 5 touchdowns, or is he going to throw for 150 and 1 touchdown and run for 150 and a touchdown and maybe catch 1 or 2? Because he's shown that he can do all 3 in a game. First quarterback to do that. So it's going to be the defense. I don't think it's going to be obviously it's going to be who can score more, but I think it's going to be who can maybe not score that 1 drive is going to be the difference in the game.
Yeah, I think it's going to also boil down to who can contain the run game. Because you look at James Cook, you look at Josh Allen, kind of dominate the run game. I think you got to tip your cap and give the point for the advantage to the Ravens and the dual threat, because you got a hammer back, which is Derrick Henry, and you got an elusive Mike Vick-esque quarterback, wildcat quarterback in Lamar Jackson, not to mention all the weapons on the outside that you could have with the air raid. So I'm honestly worried about this game because the Bills' defense has proven to be suspect, especially in situations like this where they have the triple threat. So I don't really know which Bills' defense we're going to get. They're going to have to play gritty football. I mean, that's what I'm worried about. That's what I'm worried about. They could blow the top off this game real easy, and the Ravens are notorious for doing stuff like that. Or they could get cold feet and not do that and forget how to play football. So kind of hoping we get that version of the Ravens, but that could be wishful thinking. So be it as it may. Getting back into the bracket here, Robert, we'll start with you going over the NFC. Washington and Detroit. Now, Washington kind of surprised a lot of us. We didn't expect to get this Washington Commanders. Is that what they're called? The Washington Commanders team playing against Tampa Bay. We wanted the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. At least I did. I expected more out of them. I expected a gritty Baker Mayfield team. And it's sad that it came down to what it came down to. But it was too little, too late for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And they just didn't have the sauce. So they fell short in that game. But looking forward, we can't look into the past. We got to look forward into the future. Washington and Detroit. I don't believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe they played each other in the regular season. Am I correct?
Yeah, you're correct. They didn't play each other, and they haven't played Jaden Daniels, so it's kind of a new threat for them. And historically, the Lions have been terrible against mobile quarterbacks. So even ones that were not really considered mobile quarterbacks, but still could get out of the pocket and make plays. Looking back to last year when they played the Niners and Brock Purdy got out of the pocket and, made some runs and, nice passes rolling out in key moments. So it's one of those things that if you're a Lions fan, that's kind of what you're looking at. But thankfully, they got Alex Anzalone back, and he made a huge impact last week. Against the last week against the Vikings. So that's kind of the key for them is just contain that quarterback. Make him to where he's uncomfortable in the pocket and get some sack, get some pressure on him. And that's hard to do. And you're missing all those defensive players, and Aiden Hutchinson being obviously the number one out of all that. So. That's kind of the thing is as a Lions fan, I'm concerned about that. And Washington's been able to put up points against good teams too this year. So, I'm kind of shocked that it wasn't the Bucs. They seemed like Baker played good enough to win in that game. But out of the teams that we could have played, I guess Washington's a little better than trying to play LA with how hot they are right now. So. I still think that the Lions are going to win. I don't think they're going to cover. I think the spread, the last I looked, was at like 8.5. That's kind of a big spread against a good playoff team with a nice young quarterback, and they're scheming around his skill set. So, I think they're going to win. I don't necessarily think they're going to cover, but they do have a chance to run away with the game. The Lions, that is. So that's what I'm looking forward to, and hopefully we can see Montgomery back healthy, get the 1-2 punch back going again, and hopefully that defense steps up and contains that quarterback.
Yeah, defending against mobile quarterbacks is not an easy task, no matter how good your defense is or how banged up or how healthy they are. Um, I guess, is Hutchinson coming back, or when is he coming back? Is it only for the Super Bowl?
That's even speculative at this moment. Like he's shooting for the Super Bowl, but Campbell's still. He's like, yeah, we're calling it season ending. He's like, if anybody can come back, it's Hutchinson. He's really trying. He's already been shown walking and rehabbing that leg, but that's like a very tight window for the type of break that he had to come back in that time frame. So I think it's wishful thinking, because even if he does come back, it's like, is he like game ready to be an impact maker in the Super Bowl? I don't know, but yeah, I'm just looking forward to, they're potentially going to get, I think Reeves Maben, one of their linebackers, back. I think their starting corner's done, Carlton Davis, for the year with a broken jaw. So luckily, Tyrion Arnold, he had that foot injury pretty late against the Vikings, and he had an X-ray, and he's going to be playing. So he played really good. Amik Robertson's been playing really good. So the guys that they've had have really stepped up, and Aaron Glenn has really earned himself a starting coaching position in the league just by how he's been able to scheme with all these injuries. So it's going to be exciting to see him play against a team that's got a hot quarterback. But I would lean on the veteran players on the Lions to kind of dominate and take over this game.
Absolutely. We got a comment from one of our best fans, Paul Steele. Tampa beat Detroit. Washington beat Tampa. It will come down to whoever has the lesser of the turnovers, least turnovers of the two teams. Detroit by 3. So that would obviously go in line with what you're saying, Robert. Not allowing them to cover. I think it's going to be a tight game, and it just pisses. I gotta acknowledge something. It pisses me off when a game comes down to a field goal. The team is wasting the time away, and they're set up to win the game. Yeah, they're going to win the game. Yeah, that's how the game is played. It's being played within the rules and parameters of the game. But it's just not a way that I would want to win a game. And it comes down to winning the game or not winning the game or going OT, then obviously you're going to do that. But just when I hear by 3, that's kind of what I'm assuming it's going to come down to that. It's going to come down to last second field goal. And that's probably what it's going to boil down to.
Hey, kickers are part of the game too, man.
That's right. And Jake Bates has done it before, where the Lions have been in that situation to do that. Every team has been in that situation where if they're your team, you're hoping they do that. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, in my opinion. But it's part of the game. It's played within the rules and parameters of the game. So the game doesn't give a shit that I bitch about it. So be it as it may. Tony, we got to get your take on this game. The Lions facing off against the Commanders. What's your takeaways going forward looking at this game? Playing at Ford Field, the 1 seed Detroit playing against Washington. Never played them before in the regular season.
I do believe the Commanders-Buccaneers game was by far the best game wild card weekend. So that was most entertaining to watch, at least. And obviously, Commander played well, Jaden Daniels played well, and that's going to be the key for Washington if they want to win. Is Jaden Daniels making plays, throwing and with his legs. So if you want to win, if you're Washington, you need Jaden Daniels play well and play smart. And kind of goes the same way with the Lions. Goff needs to play smart, not throwing he was very sloppy in his last game against the Vikings, so he's got to play, more what the Detroit Lions played most of the year, which was, start games 12 for 12, 13 for 13, 15 for 15, and just making the smart plays. And having Montgomery back, which I do believe he's coming back for this, even in a limited capacity, is going to help. And it definitely doesn't hurt having him back, and maybe take a little less pressure off Gibbs to, make the big plays and carry it 34 times. It's Detroit's defense that's going to be the big X factor here, because they played so well against the Vikings, but then the Rams showed, maybe a lot of people can play pretty good defense against the Vikings late in the season. So if they can contain Jaden Daniels and, not maybe get a turnover here and there and, just capitalize on the mistakes that a rookie quarterback in the playoffs can make, then you got a shot. And they got a pretty good shot, I should say. They were number one team in the NFC for a reason. They proved that they are a good team and can score with anybody. It's their defense, though. Can they slow down Washington when they need a stop? And personally, as a Lions fan, obviously a little biased, I think they can. I think the Lions will win, but I do think it's going to be last-second field goal or a last-second touchdown or a last-second defensive stop, kind of like Chicago, even though that was more on Chicago's missed clock management. But it's going to come down to you need a defensive stop or you need a score. It's going to be one way or the other, and it's going to be definitely a one-possession game.
Well, I bet a lot of – I like that analysis, and I think it's accurate, but I think a lot of Lions fans are not going to want to hear that because they're like, oh, these are the Detroit Lions. They're playing postseason football. They're trying to make history year after year and do the Dan Campbell kneecap biting scenario is just going to advance and get better and better every single year. We're going to blow the brakes off the Commanders.
But as a Lions fan, I think you're just going to be happy with a win.
Absolutely.
Just get away with a win. Doesn't matter if you win by 50 or win by 1. Guess what? A win's a win.
Get in the situation where you can allow Jake Bates to use his foot to win the game. And I think you're in a great spot. So Lions fans just got to be getting into that spot before they have any other emotions. So moving on to the final game, we'll have to wait for that game. It's going to be a hell of a game this weekend, Commanders and Lions. Looking forward to that one myself. But the last game in the NFC is the Rams and the Eagles. Robert, we'll start with you. What do you expect to see from this game? We obviously seen a gritty Los Angeles Rams team last week play and dominate the Minnesota Vikings, basically suffocated them from a very early stage in that game, and then played an Eagles team which also handily handled the Green Bay Packers in the wild card round. So what do we expect to see out of this game, both offensively and defensively?
Yeah, I think the Eagles are trying to play a little bit similar ball to the Ravens as far as just get that run game going, get Barkley going, control the clock. And, the Rams can score quick. They got some receivers that are obviously Pro Bowlers, and you got Cooper Kupp and Nakua sitting over there. So Matt Stafford, obviously Super Bowl winner now. He can sling it. They can score at will at any time. So, the run game's been kind of suspect at times, that being the Rams. So, that could be a big factor in the game. Their defense has obviously been stepping up with a bunch of young players. So I think it's really going to come down to the Eagles' run game. And if they can get that going, get Barkley going like he has been all year, that could be the factor in the game. So, and if they do get that rolling, if you're the Rams, you got to stop them in the red zone. So, similar to how the Lions defense has kind of played with all their injuries, where they've been giving up all kinds of yards, but they've been holding people in the red zone and forcing a ton of field goals and stops. So I think that's kind of what you got to play when you're playing in that game. Both really good teams. Both quarterbacks been to the Super Bowl. Stafford obviously has a ring and Hurts lost, but a close one. So I think that one can go either way. And, of the games there, I'd say that's probably the most likely of an upset. But it's pretty hard to stop the Eagles when they got Barkley just running at will on teams. So it's going to be a good one.
Absolutely. Tony, what do you expect to see out of this Eagles-Rams matchup in the NFC?
Can the Rams repeat the defensive masterpiece of Wild Card Weekend? Obviously, this is a completely different team. Yeah, you played Vikings with arguably a top 2 receiver with Justin Jefferson, but now you go to a Eagles team that has the probably best running back that's in the NFL this year with Saquon. You have a mobile quarterback, I would say. He can run. And you got 2 very good wide receivers with A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. So it's a completely different team with a little more weapons than I'd say the Vikings had. So if they can play 75% of as well as they did Wild Card Weekend, I think they definitely puts them in a very good chance, very good shot at winning the game. And like I said, can the Eagles block out all the noise outside of the stadium, the media, and hey, is AJ Brown going to request a trade because he don't like Jalen Hurts and he's unhappy and all this and a lot of blah 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 blah. Can they block that out? And if they can and show up, they have the weapons to win, and obviously probably should win this game. But if they can't, and the Rams want to win and show up, and that defense plays as well as they know they can, and Stafford is making throws like he's made all year, and Kyron Williams is playing as well as he played all year, I can definitely see the Rams winning this game. For a personal prediction, I do think the Eagles are going to win this game, but I do agree with Robert that I think this is the game with the most likely of an upset. If there's an upset in the divisional round, I think it's going to be the Rams winning, because I don't really call the Ravens.
Yeah, I was about to say that's not, if they win, that's not really an upset, man. They're
Yeah,
that's
I
just
feel
the
like
seeds, right?
Yeah, that's a
So,
pretty even game. So I
yep.
don't really count a 3 seed beating a 2 seed as an upset. And I don't
Yep.
really, of the other 3 games, I see the Rams have the best shot of pulling off an upset.
Yeah, that's probably as even as it gets with the Ravens and the Bills over there in the AFC divisional round. But like you mentioned before, like we've seen before, the Rams have proven themselves to be a playoff team and a Super Bowl contending team, even a Super Bowl winning team. So which team will we get come the weekend? We'll have to wait and see. Good deal, guys. Cool. So we got the divisional round to look forward to. We also got the conference championships to look forward to, the AFC championship and the NFC championship coming the following week. So a lot of football still to be played. I mean, people are saying, oh my gosh, it's almost over, which you're not wrong, but there's still a lot of football to be played. There's a lot of games to be played. A lot of dust needs to settle before everything is said and done. So don't put the cart before the horse. All right. That's all I got to tell you. Before we finish up tonight, guys, any final words, final thoughts? Robert, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to T.
Yeah, man, as a Lions fan, I just feel bad for all the people who are trying to buy tickets right now. I don't know if you heard like how expensive those have gotten, but
$600.
yeah, I mean, it's in the thousands of dollars now. So I'll be watching it from home. But it's going to be an exciting game. I think they can potentially run away with it. More than likely, it's going to be a one-score game, like most NFL caliber teams are in the playoffs. But yeah, I think it's going to come down to that defense, like we were saying, and I hope that the Lions defense can show up again.
Well said. Tony, what do you got for him?
$600 cheapest ticket. That's a pretty penny to spend on a Lions game, but I will as well be watching from home. But I do think they have a good shot at winning. I think the best game is going to be the Ravens Bills. It's going to be a shootout. I think that's going to be the most viewable game of the group. And then I'm personally going to be cheering for Houston to beat Kansas City because they already won it twice. I don't want to see them win it third time in a row. So cheering for CJ Stroud to play well and the defense to play like they did. And I think, like I said, the most likely upset could be the Rams. So that one will, I think, be a very entertaining game that'll come down to the end.
Good stuff. Lots of football to take place still. So be in tune and watch all of it this weekend and going forward into the following weekend. So we'll be here for all of it, all the coverage, all the analysis. Be sure to get more of us. Find all of our links in the bottom of the podcast in the description. Find us on social media. Our link tree is also in the description as well. Find us on our website, ginsportsnetwork.com, and find us on Instagram at ginsportsnetwork. For now, I'm John J. II, alongside Robert Rachow and Tony Minarik for Double Coverage, the premier NFL podcast of the Gin Sports Network. Have a great night.